Hello, welcome to another edition of the Low Code Cafe. This is episode number 155 for February 14, 2024. Today our topic is DNN Summit plus Plantain app equals tables, charts, and maps. We're going to go do an exploration of AI-powered form visualization or data visualization. And just go on to talk about how you can use Plantain app to do some very powerful data visualization techniques. Before we get into that, let me introduce myself. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantain app. We have today with us Patrick Anderson, who's a Technical Support Manager for Plantain app. He's a second chair and keeping me on track. This is a bi-weekly event that we do. It's a community webinar where we provide updates, do some demonstrations, spend most of our time on hands-on low coding. We invite you to be our guest speaker if you have an application, a Plantain app application that you think would be of interest or a technique that would be of interest to our community. We invite you to participate. All these are recorded, put out on YouTube. That's youtube.com/plantainapp. And recommend that you subscribe to that and watch every episode as soon as it comes out. We have a pretty simple agenda today. We will be doing a brief From the Trenches segment where I'll explain some hot fixes, and then we'll spend most of our time on hands-on low-code development. Do engage with us, though. You have opportunity to use the chat window or the Q&A window. If you want to speak, you can raise your hand. We'll get you on board. And when it's all over, please use the feedback form that's on our emails. It'll be a great opportunity for you to tell us how we did and what you'd like to see next time. This, as I said, is presented bi-weekly, so our next live webinar is scheduled for February 28. And so let's dive in. From the trenches of support, we'll talk about, we have some hot fixes. We've been in version 1.25 as our current version now for quite a long time, and we've released 78 different hot fixes. There's 5 more this time. I will remind you as you look at these hotfixes that you'll see sometimes that it says when you're getting ready to install it, it says requires App Builder, a particular version of App Builder, and we want to make sure that you install the required version of App Builder before you install any hotfix. As always, recommend that you back up your system before you install our hotfixes. If you get out of order and don't install the App Builder hotfix, you might crash your site or require some additional work. And so backup will help you sleep at night. So the bug fixes that we have, there's one in tabs. We've fixed the tab change actions not working with the accordion theme. So that's an improvement if you need to use the accordion theme. Within listings, we fixed item button groups not being visible. And so that was a fix that's useful if you're using button groups. And finally, there's kind of under the covers, the workflows and the engine that we use, the BPMN engine to be able to model the workflows. There was if you started out your workflow with a conditional gateway where you start off right away to say, do you want to branch this way or that way? It was resulting in an invisible action that was getting executed. It didn't do anything, didn't harm much, but it shouldn't be an invisible action before the conditional gateway. So we've fixed that. In terms of enhancements, we've released 2, one in tokens, one in automation, but both of those are about improving our upgrades screen. And we just recommend that those 2 things get installed together. So if you're having issues with the upgrades screen, this enhancement would be for you. Beyond that, we encourage you to engage in our other weekly event, the Low Code Campfire. It's Fridays, every Friday, this same hour, and it's just an opportunity to get together and talk about uh, the things that it's a more of a meeting format. It's an opportunity for you to talk about what's going on in your development efforts and perhaps find out, get some help with something you might be struggling with, or the opportunity to help someone else in the same sort of situation. We also talk about changes coming in the product, and we're going to be starting a new feature this week talking about low code recommended development patterns. These are patterns that we are using within our development team, our delivery team, people who are developing applications with Plant and App, and it's just then providing for some standardization and some best practices. So we'll be kicking that off this week. Here's some links for this episode, which Patrick is already putting on the chat, but you can register in advance for that Low Code Campfire. You can get to our webinar recordings or their community portal, which is a great place to get questions answered or submit feature requests, but questions answered by our community, not just our support. And then you can give us, this is the link that I was mentioning, where you can give us some feedback about what you liked, what you didn't like. Hopefully you'll find something in here that you will like. So today we're going to be talking about tables, charts, and maps. This is a takeoff or an extension of a session I did last week in DNN Summit. I hope some or all of you were able to go to DNN Summit. Good opportunity to learn more about the underlying platform underneath Plant and App. But in that one, I focused a lot on how you can use AI to do some JavaScript programming and get some impact that you know, might be difficult to do on your own, or as in my case, I am a developer but not a JavaScript developer, and so getting AI to write some JavaScript code for me. But we did that totally within the context of just the DNN platform. Today we're going to extend that to go on into Plant and App. So Plant and App will be responsible for rendering the maps, rendering the visualizations of the data, but also providing the data through SQL Server. So I think you're going to find it quite interesting. So here's the solution. This is what we're going to this is what we're going to be building over the next hour, some, hopefully all of this, but we're going to get some test data. We're going to display it on a map. So this will be like a map of the United States and displaying it latitude, longitude. We'll have some other versions of the map, some ability to filter the data, create a chart, create a table, add more test data. That's where we're going today. To take a look at it, this is my preparation site. I always try and prepare for this event. And so this is, for example, mapping out a bunch of test data on this is called a leaflet map. And when you click on it, we see the location, the population, the region of the country. We also can see latitude, longitude, which might not be terribly helpful for you. But that's how we get it to map out. And then this is a nice interactive map, so we can zoom in on it. And then we have some options. So for example, if we want to start filtering only to the southwest, we can click that. If we want to filter to the Midwest, we can click that. And this is just, you'll notice, changing the URL so that it redraws it for Midwest or Southwest. But we'll also develop a chart, and so the chart looks something like this, where we see a nice bar chart with all the different selected data present on it. If we want to go to the Midwest one, there's more locations, and we see those now. That's that same data set being rendered as a chart. And then if we flip to a table view, we can see this in a tabulator table, which gives nice functionality to be able to click and sort and drag and select. You may or may not want to implement tabulator versus using action grid, our listings module, but it's just demonstrating what can be done and sparking your imagination. So that's where we're going today. So let me set this aside and we will get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is to create create an entity that's going to hold all of our content, and it's going to be, and let me get it going on two screens here so I can do at least one thing at once. So we'll have, or it's going to be a database entity that's going to create all this, have a place to store all these nice data. And then in a bit, in our next step, we'll go get some test data and push it into this entity. So here we go. This is an empty Plantain app, nothing at all in here. So we're going to go into configuration and create that entity. And actually, I'm going to create a page for it as well. That's going to be our setup page. And it's one of my practices that rather than just letting Plantain app create everything on the top level of the menu, that maybe it's a good idea to put entities on a place in a separate menu section that maybe you can hide and only show to developer users. So I'm going to call this setup. It doesn't matter what we call it, with the title of setup. And I'm going to make this available not to everyone except just our developer roles, really. And then in the same way, we'll make this available to our developer roles. So now we have a page to put this on. So when we go to entities and create a new entity, the entity we're going to create is going to be called location. I'm sorry, yes, locations. So we have the singular and the plural, and I'm going to put that underneath the setup page. And the properties that we're going to do include the name, population, food, and latitude. Now we'll provide some types for this. Longitude and latitude are really decimal numbers, so we'll select that. The region is going to be text. The population is going to be an integer number, and the name is text as well. I am going to make the name be our display property. That'll be the one that when you click into it, it'll go into a lower level of detail. We are going to want to be able to filter this by region, and we'll be able to sort by everything. And this is, again, just on it's going to create some, on our setup tab, it's going to create the locations page. This is just going to be used for us to interact with it as developers, but this is not what we're publishing. We're only going to publish interacting with it in that JavaScript stuff that I was showing you a bit ago. So now we have a location entity, and if I look at the front of our website, we now see we have a setup page. That's the one I created, and we have a locations listing. We could add new ones by hand here if we wanted to, but I don't want to create and look up and do all the work of doing that by hand, so we're going to create an importer. Sure, let's see where we are on my map, where we're going. What I want to do to be able to import data very easily is I want to create some sample data, and I'm going to use AI to get it done. I'm going to copy this out here. These are the instructions that I'm going to give to AI, and I'll be happy to make these instructions available to anyone who is trying to follow along with my presentation at a later time, but I'll explain this in just a second. We're going to be using a version of ChatGPT, and actually, this will be exciting. ChatGPT has been a little bit problematic, so if this could be an odd. We can't get GPT to work today. That will be. I might have to go more towards showing what I built instead of building it. But yeah, we're getting a partial outage. Well, this one seems to be working at the moment, so I'm going to try it on here. What I was going to point out is there's the free tool, chat.openai.com, but also there's other tools, and I've been using I like the playground format on the paid tool versus this format, but we'll do this on our on the free tool, since that's the one that's working. So what I've done is copied and pasted these instructions. So let me explain. My objective is I want some test data, and I want it in a specific format. That's how I'm going to import it. I'm going to build an importer that's going to do that. I'm telling it what I want. I want city names in the US. I want population numbers, real or estimated. It doesn't matter for the purposes of this. The idea is once you've got something into production, you would populate it with your own real data. But I want it to come up with a region and a latitude and a longitude. I'm telling it very specifically that I want this JSON format, and by providing it as an example, that will trigger GPT to produce the results that I'm hoping for. So anytime you can give it a really good example, that's and especially like when you're dealing with JSON formats, it's important to give it a good example so that you get the same thing every time. So here we have some nice test data, and we'll come back to this in just a second. As a matter of fact, I'll put it on my clipboard. We'll see if we may come back here. We'll see. So what I want to do is build an importer. I'm going to go to our pages and find the location page, and excuse me, the setup page. And within setup, this needs to be setup page. It's got a location as a sub thing. I'm just going to create an importer here. I'll go under locations, and I'm going to create an import page. So we'll say new page. And this again is just our developer roles, but we're going to get to see it and edit it. And we'll save that. And I'm going to use this tool to go to it. So we've created a page. We're going to go to it. And so we can see we've got setup locations import. Action form is one way to create an import mechanism. So I'm going to put the page in edit mode. I'm going to delete out this extra text box that gets created by default for me. And instead, I want to place an action form. And so we'll say that we want to manage the form. Call this, we'll start as a blank form. I'm going to call it my import form. And I happen to like the labels aligned on the top, but that's purely a preference. We're going to add a field to the form, which is going to be called, it's going to be a large text field where we can put our data to be imported. And I'm going to name that field JSON. So let's save our work so far and see what we have. So we've got a form, it's got a spot where I could paste my JSON into it, and now we could, if we had a button, we could do something with it. So let's go on to editing that. I'm going to do that in a new tab so it's easy to bounce back and forth. So we'll have a button on our form that says import, and if you're doing this for production, you'd want to put some nice safeguards around it, like making sure that there was good data in the form or whatever. But we're just going to do, we're going to assume that it's got good data in the form. And so the first thing that we want to do, we're going to create a list from JSON. So this is going to give us something we can iterate over. The JSON model is going to be called JSON, which is the name of, we're getting the value out of this JSON field and putting it into JSON model. So it's going to use whatever we put in that box to create a list. And the list is going to be called the location list. And now what we're going to want to do is to go through and do actions for each list entry. So the list name that we're processing is the location list. And every time we get one, we're going to want to add a record to our location table. So create new location. And now we have to fill in the blanks. So it's location list, and we're going to, it's going to use the field names that we have here. So city, population, region, and these are case sensitive. So important to get those right. So, so it's city, population are the first two. So city, and then we're going to put the population into, I'm just going to form that in here. So this one is going to be population. Region, latitude, and longitude, all lowercase. So region. So we are creating a list from whatever comes in on the input. We're looping through it, and for every time we get a new item in location list, we're creating a new location in our data table. And then finally, I'm going to use a feature called display error message, just a nice easy way for me to get a message on the screen that says import complete. All right, so let's see what this looks like. So we refresh the screen. Actually, I'm going to close out of edit mode so we can just see it. So we have a JSON and an import. And so now going back to GPT and getting this JSON, we'll paste it here. So we've got all our nice cities. And let's see if this import works. It says import complete. And so now we can go to our locations and see if they come up. And they do. So we have 10 locations, different cities, different populations, regions, longitude, latitude. So nice, easy way to get some test data and get it imported into the system. Let AI do the work. That's what I always say. I will remind you if you have a question along the way, feel free to put that on question and answer or chat. Patrick will call my attention to it. So let's go on to the next step. The next step, we did it. We created the page, we created the import form, we processed the import. So, hey, I got ahead of myself. So the next thing we want to do is, I happen to know there's this nice product called Leaflet. Let's see if we can find it here. Leaflet JavaScript. you have to know about these things in order to use them. But if you go to Leaflet, and we've got a nice pop-up screen here, but Leaflet says, hey, you can create a map, and here's how to do it. And so we've got all the documentation, and you can put markers on and zoom in and zoom out, and it does the work. Amazingly, ChatGPT knows all about Leaflet, so we're going to be asking it to create a map for us, and then we're going to get that data into the map and display it. So here we go. We don't need the location listing anymore, and we don't need the importer anymore, but we are going to want to create a page called locations. And so this is going to be at the root of our site. I'm going to create a new page called locations. And this is going to be for people to look at. So we'll let everyone look at it, and then just our developer roles to edit it. This is editing the page. So this gives us a place to put things. And now if we go to the front of our site and refresh, you see we have a locations page. So this is where we're going to be doing all our low code development work. We will, it's going to be through, again, an action form. So I'm going to delete out this HTML module that was placed here by default and add a action form. The action form is going to be start off as blank. And I'm going to call this kind of generically, I'm going to call it the location form because it's going to start out being a map, but it's going to be other things as we go along, as you saw. And just in case I put any labels on here, we'll make sure they show up on the top. And then I'm going to open this form in full screen on second tab so that we can go back and forth between development and seeing what it's doing. So we've created the page, we've created the form. We need to load the data and show that we can really load the data. So here's our page. We're going to load the data. In order just to see it and just know that we're getting the right thing, I am going to add a field in the text category called large text, and I'm going to call it locations. So when we get started, we will we'll do an event that pushes, their goal will be that this is all of our JSON is going to show up here in this field called locations, and then we'll know that we have our data. So that's the data. Let's see if we can populate it. So we're going to do something like, and I'm going to get my cheat sheet on the other screen so that I can see it. If you wanted to see what this should, we're going to build some SQL to get this data. I'm going to turn on our SQL console so we can see what this looks like. So we'll save to get our SQL console to show up. And we can use this now to kind of build up a query. So there's the data table is called application. We can select everything from application. And so we can see our rows, all of our good data, test data that we created. There is a clause that you can use called for JSON path. And when you do that, it makes a nice array looking, it returns this in array, at least so long as there's not too much data. And we'll conquer not too much data in a minute so that we can do this well. But for now, this keeps it simple. So this is the SQL that we want to run to acquire our data. And so we can add an event here to run a SQL query. The SQL query we want to do is the one we just developed. And we're going to put that in locations, that text field that we created just a minute ago. So if this is working well, just the act of refreshing the screen, that event will run, it'll fill up the locations. And so now we have all of our locations in a nice JSON array. We can use any kind of JSON parser to verify the structure of the JSON is good structure. And so since it was able to, I often use Code Beautify. Today I'm using Notepad++, but we can see the data is loaded and coming out just in a very structured format. It's good JSON. So we've done this much. We've said, we've created the page, we've got a form, we've got the data on the form. Eventually, we're going to hide that text box, but for now, we'll just leave it so we know we've got good data. What we want to do now is build a map around that data. This is the spot where I'm going to jump back to AI and get it to help me. And so again, I've got some instructions and then I've got some sample data here showing up. And so this is the question I'm going to pose to AI. So I'm going to copy that and paste it. So the question I'm saying is I have this data in a string called locations. And it's actually a field, but for the purposes of JavaScript, it's useful for it to be in locations. You're going to see we're going to have to do a little bit of manipulation of the JavaScript to find and make all this work, but we'll start with this instruction. I'm telling it I want to write Leaflet JS code to display it on a map. And because I know a little bit about Leaflet, I know the other questions to ask. I want an open street map that can zoom in and out on locations in the United States. And I want to place markers, those the blue markers, on the data that is returned from, oh, this is bad instructions, on the data on the locations data. And it's telling what the markers should be. The markers are those blue things. When you click on them, it's going to show the city, the population, region, latitude, longitude. And then I'm giving it this nice illustration of my JSON so it knows exactly how to build my code. So let's see if ChatGPT can write some code for us. It's going to come out with a lot of stuff, and I'll tell you what, we're going to have to do a little bit of work. And with that, I mean, this is not a beginner topic, right? If you know nothing about development, nothing about the web, you might find it a little bit difficult. But even for me, I'm leveraging. I have some of that experience, but not a lot of JavaScript, and certainly I don't know the leaflet syntax without doing some research in on Leaflet. But we're going to let it write this, and then and so I'm looking at locations, and it didn't quite understand what I meant. It's trying to put the data here, and it's expecting the data to be right in the JavaScript. And so I'm going to give it some more information and see if it'll do a better job. So since I happen to know that the data is going to be delivered as a string, that's what's coming out of this locations token that we have in our system. Hopefully, yeah, see, now we're getting what I needed. It's doing a JSON parse. So I guarantee you're going to struggle with some of these if you try to do it, but you can work your way through it. So let's see what things we need out of here. Um, it's assuming it's writing a web page, and we're not doing a whole web page. We're going to need some of the things out of it. So we see that it has this style sheet that's going to need to be in it. And we can also see that it's added some styles. There's a div where the map is going to go, and then we start, there's a Leaflet JavaScript. This is the library that comes from Leaflet, and then our custom script. So we're going to need all of these things. We're just going to have to change them up just a little bit. Sorry for jumping around here. I've got to get GPT to let me copy and paste what I want. All right, so we're going to need the CSS and the div and the script and all this stuff. And so I'm going to copy it out. On our form, in addition to displaying the locations, I'm going to add a new thing that is a static text. A static text is just whatever we put in here is what's going to get displayed. And so I can paste all my JavaScript right in here and clean it up a little bit, and we'll be good to go. So we need this link. It wanted to do the style that way, so I'm fine with that. We don't need a head or a body. That's already present as part of DNN. This is where the map is going to go in this div. We get our other script, and now we have our custom script. So it's got this variable location string, and this is where we want our data to go. So we can just say locations. It's going to expand the token locations and put it right in there. So we don't need this comment anymore. And now the rest of this, we're parsing them. It's initializing the map. It knows how to center and zoom over the default centered view over the USA. Does all the stuff, knows how to load street map, and looping through all the locations and binding in some markers. Script done. So with just those few changes, let's see where we get. We'll save that. Go back here and refresh. Isn't that crazy? So we have all of our data showing up, and when we click on things, it shows the content of the marker. And so, yeah, that's our initial objective. We can make this a little bit nicer now. We don't really need to see locations, and I'm just going to delete it off of here. What happens when this isn't present anymore? This event creates the token called locations, which can be consumed on the like the static text, but it doesn't have to be physically on the screen. So that's just going to clean that up. I'm going to call this map. Or yeah, maybe I'll call it data viz. This is because it's not just going to be a map, it's starting out as a map. All right, so here we go. So step at a time, we'll refresh. So now we just have, and if you were working on this, you might clean it up to, zoom and center a little bit better, but at least it's working. So now I want to do a lot of things with this one form. So I want to clean this up a little bit. What I'm going to do is, instead of having the JavaScript be part of the form, I'm going to have it be in a workflow. That way we can get different JavaScript depending on what we want to do. So I'm going to move it to a workflow. I'm going to create a workflow token and use that token in the map. That makes this display of data be very dynamic, or at least heading towards being dynamic. So let's go do that. The content that we have right now that works, I'm going to keep that. and head towards making that be a workflow. So this is going to be a new workflow, and we're going to call this, what do we want to call it? Similar way. So this is a, yeah, map type, sure. No, this is going to be the data viz script. It's going to be used to get the data visualization script. The input parameter is going to be the, let's say data viz, and the default value is default. So this will be where we'll be able to call for different things. The first default one is just going to be our leaflet map, but we can call for other things like charts. I am just going to start off with a conditional gateway here and do a create update token that is going to be map and output a variable called script and paste all that stuff that I held back on my clipboard from the other one. So everything that it's going to need to create the script is going to be returned in script. We're going to do a end gateway and an yet I probably need to do some more stuff. So we'll move this around a little bit. We'll begin to anticipate another type. So we'll do a token that is, maybe this one is going to be for a chart. And I'll just tell you right now, if I run out of time today, we will continue this the next time we get together. So we'll have some kind of script that does a chart, and so that'll output a script as well. We will, whoop, that's not what I wanted. I want to merge this to the endpoint here. So now we have two different paths, and now we can do an end. So this pattern, we have we need to set a condition. We're interested in data viz. If data viz is equal to default, then you're going to get the default map. It's going to go on this path. Data viz equals chart. It's going to go on the chart path. And I'm going to leave a nice little marker here to be done chart. So we can see at least that our logic is working before we get into making the script actually work. And then both of these are outputting scripts, so we can go here and have an output that's called script, or whatever we call it, and we're going to put the value of script. Let's test this out. If we run it and don't type anything or type default, it's default is provided here, we get all of our scripts necessary to do a map. If we type chart, we get everything we need to do a chart. It's just not done yet, so it's a nice little stub. But we have, as we set out to do, we have moved our JavaScript into a workflow. We're going to make this workflow easy to consume by making a token. So let's do that. We're going to add a namespace that's going to be called data.viz. And within that, we're going to create a token called getScript. It's going to be a workflow token running the data.viz script workflow. And the output is going to be whatever that script, whatever the output is, that's what we're going to get. So this is going to, we can save and test this. And so anytime we use this token now, it's going to run that workflow and get us a script. We can run it with no value, and we get all of our leaflet stuff. We can run it with chart and get our stub. We run it with anything else, it's going to return junk, right? So because there's no path for that. So that's kind of something we should protect against, making sure that we have a good value here in the data viz that we want. But this token now returns our scripting. And so we've got our next objective. We've created our workflow token. So now we want to use that token in our map. So we go back to our map, we go back to our development, and instead of putting it here directly in the content, instead of doing that, we're going to just erase that. Remember, this is called data viz as our static text. We're going to create an event that is token event, create update tokens, and we're going to set data viz equal to this nice workflow token. And one of the things that you would learn if you did some trial and error is that the token that's inside of this, the location token that needs to be expanded. Let's see if I can show you that. So back to the workflow, edit, look at this thing here. Expand this out a little bit. But this one that we were working with a little while ago, where we were getting the locations, there it is. The locations is a token, and when we're trying to set that in, when we do this, where we get it and push it into data viz one time, it would actually have bracket location bracket, and it wouldn't be expanded. But if we come down here to number of versions and say 2, now this is going to get expanded, and so it replaces the token, and then recursively it does it again. So now locations get expanded with the data that's coming out of our system. All right, let's see what happens now. So we refresh this, and it looks like it hasn't changed. It still works, so that's good news. Now let's do a little bit more of a trick. Instead of doing default, we will do a get data viz. So we're going to get a command off the, get a value off the query string, data viz. And if we don't get one, we're going to assume it's the default. We refresh, still working. But now if we do data viz equals chart, we get our TBD chart stub. So now we have it wired so we can put any kind of visualization into that workflow and just call it by name. All right, let's see where we are. So we've simplified it, and now we will yeah, I want to go on to do other things. I'm going to skip this part, and we've already changed it to do different kinds of map types. We called it data viz. But let's do a chart. And this is the instructions that we would give to AI. So let's get that started, and then we'll explain it. So we're saying we have this data that looks like this. Again, we're providing a nice example of the data, and it's in a string called locations. Hopefully it'll do that part of it right. We're asking for Chart.js code to display this as a bar chart. So Chart.js, again, like we did Leaflet a minute ago, we can go in and look at Chart.js. It shows you the ton of things that you can do with Chart.js. And so there, if you know what you're doing and it's got the examples and you read about them, you can see how to do lots and lots of different kinds of charts. This is the tool we're going to use, and we're going to tell it we just want a bar chart. So we're getting GPT to do this for us with the instructions that says we want it as a bar chart. So let's see what it came up with. It has all this code, and I'm just going to copy this and work with it in Notepad for a minute because it's easier to see it all. We're going to clean this up as if we can paste it into our workflow chart. So we are going to need this Chart.js script to load it, so that's there. The canvas tag is where the population chart is going to go, so we need to keep that. And then we have our location string equals something, and this is where we're going to say, instead of having this real data that it's put in here, we're going to say that we want our locations. What did we call our token? Locations.
You had an S on it.
Thank you. So it's locations, and then the rest of this, it says, you know, we're extracting things, we're creating the chart, we're doing this. We don't need the end body, we just need the scripting stuff. So this is our next variation. We can go into our workflow, and in the chart, instead of saying the stub value, we can paste this into it. And we might want to tinker with this a little bit. It's saying it's doing 400 by 200. It's kind of setting the size of the canvas, but let's see if it works first before we tinker with it. So we'll save this and go back to our form, and it's already asking for charts, so let's refresh and see what comes out. Yes. So the script is being dumped on the page. It's using the same data source, and so now we get our data from all over. So that was fast. So let's think about some quick enhancements that we can do. We'll save handling larger data sets for next time, but ordering is a nice, easy one to do, and maybe some filtering. That's something we can do in 7 minutes. So going back to it, we have our events. We're running a SQL query. We can say order by population descending. And so this is going to apply to all of our data visualizations. And so if we do that now and refresh, we should see the big ones come out first. Yep, big to little. So that was easy enough to do. And then we could do other filtering. So for example, if we look at our data, see what we've got here. We've got things like Southwest or West or South. So we've got some in the Southeast. Let's say we wanted to filter by region. We can go again to our SQL query and say, add a where clause. And say We're going to get it off the query string, and the default is going to be blank. So if there's nothing, it'll be everything, and then I'm going to use a wildcard here so that it will get everything if you don't say anything. So now we're adding filtering. And so hopefully it'll still work. Database equals chart, and region equals southwest. And we only have one thing in the southwest. What did I say? Ah, southeast is what we care about here. That's a good one. So our filtering is now being applied automatically to our, and that's, oh, we have two. I thought we had three. We have two. We have three in the west. Okay, let's land there. There, three. Los Angeles, Seattle, Denver. And now just kind of wrapping up, let's go to, we'll flip this to default data visualization, kind of show the same thing on a map. So with some extension, we can make it. We've got a lot of things done here. We've got two different types of visualizations. We've got data, a little bit of data filtering going on, but hopefully that sparked some ideas for you. Just to kind of summarize where we are and how we got there, we have a form. The form has only a static text that we're going to push scripts onto. The scripts and the data come from events. So we have two events, one that says get data, and it's doing selection out of our test data application database. Could be any data source. We could, but it just has to return nicely formatted JSON array with the elements that we need. But it's getting that in something called locations, a token called locations. And then this is get the desired get it and send it to static text. So we're grabbing the visualization through the use of this token. And then again, to keep with the summary, we have a token that called getScript that runs our it runs the data viz script workflow, and the workflow data viz script workflow does takes an input. What kind of data viz do you want? It has a branch for two different items, and it always returns a script. So we can extend this if we, and we will next time, we will extend this to do tables and maybe some fancy things with the maps, but we can have lots and lots of different visualizations, and all of the intelligence for how to render those are stored here in a workflow. All the work of finding the, of getting the data is connected to that form.
Real quick, Dale, just for clarity, I'm guessing the reason you didn't take the token and put it directly into the static text field was for the ability to, for the recursion, so that locations expands. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. If we had just put that same token into this content, locations would not expand. So you get scripts, but locations would be bracket locations bracket, and so you're right. In my development, that's what I did at first, and then I realized, oh, that wasn't expanding. So that's why I used the event to push it into that field. Good. Any other questions? Any comments? We will take this to the next level when we get back together again, but we're glad that you were able to join us for this particular episode of Low Code Café. And we will do that next element on February 28th. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.